Greg, did you hide it somewhere? Did you take it? My wife, Carrie, turns red in the face and furiously confronts me. Her precious, expensive wristwatch, which she had just bought, has disappeared from the shelf where it had been kept. I didn't take it. I don't even know about your watch. Well, who else could it be? You're always at home claiming you're working, but I don't even know what you're actually doing. Give it back, you thief. I've told you, I didn't take it. But no matter how many times I said this, Carrie, with blood rushing to her head, wouldn't hear me out. Then my mother-in-law, Jean, who had been listening, smirked smugly. Greg, you were cleaning in the afternoon, weren't you? Maybe you lost it somewhere then. It's true, I had cleaned in the afternoon as she had told me to. I did it reluctantly during breaks from my work. But I hadn't even touched Carrie's watch. I told them this, but neither of them believed me. That watch was extremely expensive. Find it right away. No meals for you until you find it. What? Hold on a sec. Please, stop this. Despite my protests, my wife forcefully... My name is Greg. Carrie and I have been married for 3 years. A year ago, she insisted we live with her mother Jean, who had been living alone, and Carrie felt sorry for her. I wasn't too keen on the idea, as my mother-in-law often made sarcastic remarks to me, but my wife was insistent, so I reluctantly agreed. And with the move, we bought a house on a mortgage. I work from home, so having a larger space has made my work easier. However, my wife, who goes to the office to work every day, doesn't understand working from home. She just thinks I'm locked in the room surfing the internet. She often mocks me, saying I'm not doing much work. Even when I try to explain what I do, it probably looks like I'm just playing around, as my work is very different from hers. She always asserts some incomprehensible theory that work is about sweating it out in the outside world. I bet you've been playing on the internet all day again, haven't you? You're such a slacker, incapable of doing real work. I, on the other hand, had a busy day today. I've got lots to do because everyone relies on me. She says things like that. Despite being busy and having lots to do, your salary is pretty low. Carrie works part-time in light labor, and her salary is low. But she's a show-off. Before we moved in together, she used to demand that we send money to her mother every month. Whenever she goes out to eat with her part-time colleagues, she pays for all the food. She also has a habit of wasting money on expensive bags, shoes, and recently, a luxury wristwatch worth a couple $1,000s. I've asked her to stop multiple times to think about our household budget, but she just ignores me. So when the living expenses or mortgage payment falls short, I pay from the savings I made when I was single. My mother-in-law, unaware of all this, takes my wife's words at face value and is under the mistaken impression that all I do is play on the internet. Greg, since you're just playing around, could you please clean up here? Jean, I'm actually working right now. But you're not out there working like Carrie, so you're not earning much, are you? Come on, get a move on and clean up. She always says things like this. Greg, I'm meeting my friends now, so could you please get the car ready? Chop chop. What will you do if I'm late because of you? Despite me working, she makes me do household chores and even drive her around, which is causing me trouble. Hey Carrie, your mother has this weird idea that work is supposed to be done outside. Even though you can work from home, this makes no sense. Even when I complained to my wife, she said, Do it for Mom's sake! Greg, you're so petty! There was no reasoning with her. Then one day, Carrie came home from work, her face beet red, and started shouting at me. "Greg, where did you put my expensive watch? Did you hide it somewhere? Did you take it?" She was furious, her face completely red. Her brand new expensive wristwatch had apparently disappeared from the shelf where it was kept. It was nowhere to be found. "It wasn't me. I don't know anything about your watch. I never touched my wife's things, so it couldn't have been me." But she had made up her mind that it was me. "Who else could it be? You're always at home claiming you're working, but I don't even know what you're actually doing. You probably rifled through my shelf and took it. Give it back, you thief." "I'm telling you, I didn't take it." No matter how many times I said this, Carrie, with blood rushing to her head, wouldn't hear me out. Then my mother-in-law, who had been listening, smirked smugly. "Greg, you were cleaning in the afternoon, weren't you? Maybe you lost it somewhere then?" It's true, I had cleaned in the afternoon, as she had told me to. I did it reluctantly during breaks from my work. But I hadn't even touched her watch. I explained this, but neither of them believed me. "That watch was extremely expensive. Find it right now. No meals for you until you find it." "Hold on a sec. Please, stop this. Open up." "Find it in this room first." But despite my pleas, they locked me in the room. I searched all over the room, but I couldn't find it. "Carrie, I'm hungry." "No meals until you find it, remember?" Since they wouldn't let me out of the room, I couldn't go out to buy food, and they kept an eye on me so I couldn't sneak any food. I ended up not eating for 24 hours. In the end, I couldn't find the watch, and Carrie said, "This is on you, Greg. You have to pay for it because you couldn't find it." We're already barely scraping by. We can't afford to pay thousands of dollars for an expensive watch. But no matter what I said, she insisted that I had to pay. I had no choice but to take on more work. Between the heavy workload, house chores, and taking care of my mother-in-law, I was completely worn out, both physically and mentally. On my day off, I went back to my parents' house for a change of pace, and my mother, Teresa, noticed my condition right away. "Greg, honey, what's wrong? You look pale." "Mom, I can't." I told my mother about how I had taken on more work recently, how living together with Carrie's mother was harder than I thought, and how I was unsure whether I could get along with my wife and her mother. And she listened to my story attentively. "It takes time for strangers to start feeling comfortable with each other. But Greg, don't hesitate to talk to me when you're in trouble. You can even come back home if you want." "Thank you, Mom." She really cared for me. Just knowing that made me feel stronger and relieved. She always listens to my stories, doesn't interfere too much, and is always there for me. I can't thank her enough. A few days later, I received a call on my smartphone from an unknown number. Suspicious, I answered, only to find it was from a hospital informing me that my mother was in a critical condition due to an accident. When I told my mother-in-law and my wife, they urged me to go to the hospital immediately. I went alone to the hospital where my mother had been taken. Apparently, she had been hit by a car from behind while walking on a street. The car had driven off after the collision, and the police were currently investigating. I was praying for my unconscious mother. I needed to get in touch with Carrie and her mother, as I probably wouldn't be able to go home soon. I called home from the hospital, and Carrie answered the phone briskly. "Carrie, I'm sorry, Mom hasn't woken up yet, so I don't think I can come home anytime soon." Okay, stay with her. More importantly, Greg, if something happens to your mother, the inheritance will go to you, right? Jesus, Carrie, don't say such things for God's sake. Just wanted to check. The inheritance will go to you, right? Yeah, but... Okay, I got it. Then take good care of your mother, she said in a cheery voice that felt off. She was talking about inheritance as if my mother's accident was someone else's business, and I was disgusted. 2 days later, I decided to go home once. Arriving home, I noticed my mother-in-law's car was missing. Perhaps she had gone out. As I entered the house feeling slightly relieved, I was surprised to find her and Carrie. Oh, you scared me. I didn't know you were both here. Greg, you've been cheating, haven't you? They both glared at me. I had no idea what they were talking about. Cheating? Why on earth would I do that? What's gotten into you all of a sudden? You met with a woman last Friday, didn't you? I had a meeting with a client for work. Is that what you're talking about? That's not cheating. Meeting secretly with the woman is cheating. You're the worst. Being accused of cheating just because I met someone from work is ridiculous. But no matter how much I tried to explain, they wouldn't listen. You won't get away with lying and trying to deceive Carrie by claiming it was a client. Jean, I swear it's not like that. Liars should leave this house. Jean grabbed my arm, handed me my somehow already packed luggage, and tried to push me out of the house. Wait a minute! It's really a misunderstanding! Shut up! Get out! We'll send you your other belongings later! You should be grateful for that! They yelled before throwing me out of the house and refusing to let me in ever again. I couldn't understand why they suddenly suspected me of cheating. I would never cheat on my wife. Despite my confusion, I went to my parents' house. The next day, all my belongings were delivered there. What is this? It's strangely organized, I thought as I arranged my stuff. Then, I noticed something odd. No matter how much I looked, I couldn't find my bank card. Why was it missing when all my other valuables were there? Then it hit me. When my mother had the accident, Carrie was oddly concerned about the inheritance. I remember the feeling of unease I had at the time, and Carrie seemed pleased when she heard the inheritance would go to me. Could it be? Did she steal the card for that? That would explain why they suddenly started accusing me of cheating. They must have kicked me out of the house to take all the inheritance. The more I thought about it, the more anger welled up inside me. I clenched my fist in frustration. I couldn't forgive them for trying to snatch away my inheritance without even worrying about my mother. You pay for this, Carrie and Jean. I'll make sure of it. A month later, the doorbell at my parents' house kept ringing. When I opened the door, my wife and mother-in-law, with faces red with anger, stormed in. Hey, what's going on? Your bank card doesn't work. Explain this, they demanded as my bank card was thrown onto the floor. So you two did steal it. Plus, we've received a notice that the mortgage hasn't been paid. What's going on? Of course you can't use the bank card. Considering your spending habits, I had changed it beforehand. This one is a decoy. The real card has been kept at my parents' house. As for the mortgage, I stopped the payments when I was kicked out of the house. What did you say? My wife shrieked with anger, trying to grab me. Just then, a sharp voice rang out. Calm down! Startled by the sound, my wife and mother-in-law jumped. Why is she? They stuttered, looking at my mother who had come out from the back. Surprised to see my mother healthy? She recovered from her critical condition. After the incident, my mother had improved and was discharged from the hospital. I deliberately didn't tell them about this. They seemed to have thought my mother had died and turned pale at the sight of her healthy state. I've heard everything from Greg. Carrie, what on earth is this all about? Spending all the money for the mortgage and living expenses, even stealing the card, counting on my inheritance. Can't you distinguish between what's right and what's wrong? Scolded by my mother, Carrie's face turned pale and her lips trembled. Greg told me that even when he was scorned by your mother, you never defended him. And then even without proof, you kicked Greg out of the house, accusing him of cheating. Carrie and Jean were mumbling some excuses, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Carrie, what were you planning to do with the money from the stolen card? Were you gonna use it on your lover? I asked as I presented the proof of my wife's infidelity I'd gotten from an investigator. You were accusing me of cheating, but it turns out it was you who was cheating. The evidence was a picture of my wife with her lover. After she kicked me out, I began investigating why she was so desperate for the inheritance. And I found out she had been cheating on me. It seemed she had been using some of the money she squandered on her lover. Looks like you've had a long relationship with your lover, and you still want to call me the worst? Let me guess. Once I was out and the inheritance was in, you were planning to divorce me. Fine, let's get a divorce as you wish. Of course I'll take a hefty alimony. Upon hearing this, both Carrie and her mother panicked. Hold on, Greg. Carrie didn't mean to do any harm. Forgive her. Let's live together happily again. She's right. I was just being hard on you for your own good, Greg. Let's go back to being the three of us again. They tried to approach me, defending each other. The very thought of living with them again gave me chills. I shrugged off Jean's hand when she tried to grab my arm. In that moment, something fell out of her pocket with a clatter. Hey, isn't this the expensive watch Carrie has been looking for? Care to explain, Jean? She quickly picked up the watch with a guilty look on her face. Well... She stammered, obviously flustered. It was clear that she had stolen it. Mom, you said Greg stole it! But you were the one who stole it? Jesus! And it was you who suggested stealing Greg's bank card in the first place. I didn't do anything wrong. It's all your fault, Mom. What are you talking about? All of this started because you were complaining about not having money, about not having enough allowance. I did all this for you. I thought Greg's mother would surely die after the accident. Then the inheritance would come and I wouldn't need to sell the watch. I could just return it. Hearing these words from her, I exchanged glances with my mother. So it was you who caused my mother's accident? You were the one who hit me with your car? Jean hung her head with a start, her face draining of color. I suddenly remember that her car wasn't in the garage when I returned from the hospital after my mother's accident. It must have been her who hit my mother. She probably took her car for repair afterward. And later on, she was arrested. As suspected, her motive was indeed the inheritance. Afterward, my divorce with Carrie was finalized and I collected a hefty alimony. My ex-wife had no savings left, and since the house was in my name, she had to give it up. She remarried her lover, but eventually divorced him too, unable to change her ostentatious and condescending behavior. I heard from others that she was struggling a lot due to the alimony. I have no sympathy whatsoever for her. Looking at her, I learned that those who bring misery to others for their own vanity and money will always receive their just deserts. As for me, I met a nice lady afterward, and I'm living happily ever after.